Okay, so Mark here from Rock and Load. This afternoon, I have the pleasure of being joined by Americana stroke blues singer, Miss Elles Bailey. How are you doing, madam?
I am good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, it's nice to get the chance to finally talk to you because I've seen your name bouncing around social media and everything else for the past number of years, but we've never really crossed paths. So it's great to catch up.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm just admiring your lovely green screen.
Well, yeah, I know, yeah, and I put in so much effort and nobody's ever asked in the past. Well, thank you for noticing. So how's life with yourself at the moment then, Els?
It's good. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty tired at the moment. The album release has been amazing, incredible, an absolute roller coaster of a ride, and it's just all caught up with me in the last few days. Hence the croaky voice at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah, too many interviews in demand. Unfortunately, in demand. It's a good thing to be.
Love
So,
it, love it.
so, as it's our first time chatting, can you give me a little bit of history about yourself and just tell us like what initially made you want to get involved in music and where did your interest in music start?
So I never ever really not wanted to be in music. It was just always like, that's what I'm gonna do. Like one of my earliest memories is sort of being like the main part in the school play, or singing in musical theatre. I was really really into music, art and drama. Like that's what I did as from a very young age. And it was about around the age of 8 that I declared that I would be a pop star.
Oh yeah.
So my idea of a pop star, an 8-year-old in the 90s, was the Spice Girls. So I was going to be Baby Spice, even though I was ginger. And I was going to, ride in limos and go to swanky parties and play Wembley Stadium. So that was my 8-year-old dream. And I'm very glad that the reality isn't that, because I think the idea of being famous is not something that I like, especially in today's modern celebrity. Like it doesn't appeal to me. But I'm very the reality is different. But I guess the dream's the same, and I get to make music, and that's just the best thing ever.
Yeah, and I'm around saying you're a pianist. You play piano? Yeah. Do you play any
I
other
mean,
instruments?
I play guitar horribly, and I think I play the piano, although I've just had a baby or recently, and we're currently living in temporary accommodation, and so the piano was in the lounge, and then the baby was in with us, so I could play a little bit then. And then, as we never made it back home, and I was like, okay, it's time for the baby not to be in our room anymore. He's now in the lounge in the piano. So the only time that I have to play is when he's sleeping, which I can't do because he sleeps next to the piano. So
Right.
I think I play piano, but maybe when I move home, I'll be
Yeah.
able to play the piano again.
And when did you start picking up the piano?
From probably the age of 5, I reckon. Yeah,
Okay.
really, really early doors, but I didn't get it for a long time. I faked my way through it. I was playing classical music. That wasn't what I was about. And it was probably the age of 13 when I actually moved schools and moved teachers. My mum turned around to my new piano teacher and said, teach her to play like Elton John. I failed miserably. But what they did teach me is about chords, which I didn't really know about. And I couldn't read the music. I'd faked it until then. And then they started showing me chords and how different chords work. And you'll hear that, there is a lot of Elton influences in my music. And that is because I learned how to write songs basically through Elton, really.
Yeah, and that's when maybe your proper musical journey really started to take off. Then when you were starting to write your own songs and imitate your favorite.
Exactly. Like as soon as I started to play the piano like that, I wrote my first song. I was 13. It was rubbish, but it's you got to start somewhere, haven't you?
Yeah. And so when did you actually start wanting to perform publicly and get out into the world?
I mean, I was basically doing it then. My dad was in a rock and roll band, and so I just go and sing with him. And then it was probably age 16, I was in an indie band. I'm actually looking at pictures of me 18 sort of on the wall. This is where I grew up. So, and this is my brother's room actually, and he's got pictures of our first gig at the Fleece and Firkin in Bristol. I mean, that's what it was called then. It was actually called the Fleece. You know, I was 17 years old, and it's just amazing. Like, so, yeah, that's kind of when it started. But I was in a band until I was 21. Then it was with my brother. He took over my dad's business. I then thought, oh, maybe I should go to uni. So I went to uni and I studied psychology, something completely different. And it was in my third year, when I was meant to be writing my dissertation, that a sort of mutual friend got in touch and said, hey, do you fancy making music? And I was like, yeah, that sounds way better than writing my dissertation. And that's where Elles Bailey started, really.
Yeah, and at that stage, had you sort of found your own voice as far as the musical style you wanted, or were you still on the journey?
I think I was still really searching then, and it took me a really long time to find my own voice, and also I think to find the confidence to be a solo artist. Like I'd always fronted a band. I felt very confident in that kind of setting. My brother had been the driving force of the band. I'd been the writer, but you know, the whole business thing didn't sort of, you know, he did that. And so it took me probably until 2016, I reckon, was when I really started to find my voice. And that was when I recorded my debut album, Wildfire. And that was when I really sunk my teeth into the business side of being an indie artist, and I love the business side of things now. I can just self-release this album, and it's an incredible journey. It's a tough one, and there's just so much that you have to do that I can't even explain. I was chatting with a friend who's also an indie artist, and she just said that there's so much you have to do, but you couldn't even say it because it just sounds so mad. But yeah, there's so much, but I love it. It's an incredible journey.
Yeah, and did you have any success or notoriety with any of the earlier bands or projects you were working on before you decided to go solo?
No, not really. You know, we sort of had started to get a little bit well known in Bristol, and I played with Scouting for Girls on their first tour. So that was, you know, that when they were literally blowing up, and I gigged with the Sugar Babes, where their shoe collection was bigger than our backstage room, something like that, like their room for their shoes. Yeah.
All life experience, isn't it?
Exactly.
And you sort of touched on it there about the whole aspect of learning the business, because being the musician part of it is only a very small part, isn't it?
Yeah, it is such a small part of it, which is, you know, it really should be the main part. Like that's what you want, but you've got to play the game as well. So and it's ever moving. Like that's what's so interesting about the music industry is, you know, something a week ago was actually out of date today because it just moves so fast.
Yeah, and even more so over the likes of the lockdown, when there wasn't the touring aspect to support that and build on something. You know, anybody who was dropping music, it literally was like next day newspaper. You know, for like fish and chips. It was just shocking how quickly it disappeared.
I know it's been a strange time, and I, you know, it's definitely, we've had to navigate it for sure.
Yeah. And so you said you dropped your first album there. It was like you had an EP out 2015, but your first album was 2017, Wildfire. I'm sure there's a big progression from yourself then from those two recordings.
Yeah, so 2015 was the Who Am I to Me EP, which was, you know, it was like me just trying to find my own voice. Yeah. And then I did the Elberton Sessions, which was just a live EP. It was a really, and that's how I make music. I go into a room and I record live with a band. And that was as honest as it gets. It was acoustic, it was fully live, it wasn't edited at all. I was in the room with the musicians. It was in this beautiful old manor, and it was really lovely. I really liked that EP. And a lot of those songs made up Wildfire.
Yeah.
So I took those songs. I basically did the acoustic versions before I did the full band versions, and I actually somehow made it to Nashville, and I made Wildfire in Nashville, and that was, that sort of changed everything for me. It was kind of by sheer luck that I ended up over there. And I mean, on my first trip over there, I was introduced to Bobby Wood, who is an absolute legend in musician royalty, and he's worked with everybody. So Brad Knoll, who produced Wildfire, he introduced me to Bobby. We co-wrote a couple of songs, and then Bobby introduced me to Dan Auerbach, to Dwayne Eddy, and it was just like, what the heck? It's literally like, no one knows who I am.
Yeah.
In Bristol. How have I ended up in Nashville, and I'm sat in Dan Auerbach's studio with my dad chatting with Dwayne Eddy? It was a very surreal experience.
Yeah, it is, and it's like sliding doors almost. Sometimes the industry, opportunities come along, and if you're not ready to take advantage of them, then you really will lose out.
Yeah, and to be honest, like, I almost turned down the trip to Nashville because it just, I'm so used to have doors shut in my face, or to just, there's a lot of people that speak a lot of stuff in the industry, but it doesn't mean anything. And that's kind of what I thought from this trip. And it was a lot of people just turned around and said, "Els, just go, just get on that plane and go, because you'll never know if you don't go." And I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to go.
And that was probably a snowball, which is really then just set your career on a trajectory.
Exactly. Yeah, bringing that story home, releasing Wildfire, subsequent touring. And I've always been one to just get out on the road and do it. And, if I'm playing to 3 people, if I'm playing to 300 people, like the show doesn't change.
Yeah. And what was the experience, as you say, talking with those guys who have had such vast experience and sort of songwriting with them as well? It must be quite an educational experience.
Yeah, it really has been. And I think it's actually given me a confidence, I think, because I've been able to be in the room with, these absolute legends and people that have worked with everyone, and then sort of pioneers as well. It's kind of, you learn from them, and it has given me a confidence, I think, as I've got stronger with my writing, and it's helped me learn. Yeah, I think just giving me a confidence with my writing, and not a certainty, but like the chance to believe in yourself as well. Because firstly, you've got to believe in what you're doing, or no one else is going to believe in it.
Yeah. It's funny because I've interviewed a couple of guys recently who just talked about different points in their career when they've maybe sat down with a producer or a songwriter and really deconstructed what they were working on, and sort of getting that understanding of the construction of a song properly, because obviously any of us can sit down with a guitar and beat a few chords together and throw lyrics on top and think, there's something there. But when it comes to having something which is really worthy of putting on an album, it's a different ballgame, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote 40 songs for this current album, probably about the same for Road I Call Home. Wildfire, I'd probably written a lot. You get your whole life to write your debut album, but there was a few, like, right, these are going on the record. But Road I Call Home and Shining in the Half Light, there were loads that sort of were written for it, but the ones that were picked were the ones that made sense. And I think often it's not just about the song as well, it's about what you're trying to say as an album. Like, what is this story going to say? And I think in today's industry, it often gets so lost because we're so song orientated. Spotify is all about the song. It's not about the record anymore. The track, the whole thing about the track listing and order. For me as an artist, when I'm putting together an LP, like, that's the story. That's so important. It's all woven in to the sound and the journey of the album. So, all of that plays its part. So it's not just about the individual songs, it's about the story as a whole.
Yeah, I think if you're slightly more old school, especially, you look at it the way we were presented albums many years ago, and 12 songs, like, which is basically an album and telling a story across those. Whereas today it's almost like, have we got 10 or 12 singles, which are going to pop out month after month? I actually try and avoid that, with a lot of the artists, and even artists that I've listened to for years. I know the record labels want to push, single after single, but I just step back from them and wait for the album to be released then, because I don't want to hear them in drip feeds.
I mean, I played that game. I released 5 songs before my 10-track album came out. And I must admit, by the time Riding Out the Storm came out, which was my favorite song on the record, I was like, I've given it all away already. Like, what have I done? And I think, because you do have to play the game. Spotify is really important. And so I'm building, a journey with singles, which is what I did over the campaign of the pre-order. But I think I did drop one too many. I was like, oh, I should have held back to 1 and done 4 and then the album. But I think when the album came out, I think they were happy.
Yeah. And how did you see the new album again against your back catalogue? Are you really happy with the progression again?
Yeah, I think it's been a really, really nice progression. I think people listening to it, even if they're new to me or they've been with me the whole way, I think it will make sense to them. It's not a whole, I've not changed genres. I've not, or I'm still in every genre as I always have been.
Yeah.
So I do think there is more of a depth there. I do think we really, really, really honed in on how we were going to produce this album. That was with Dan Weller, who produced it. We chatted about this record for months and months before we went into the studio, and we actually had a week of pre-production as well, where we deconstructed the songs and we listened to. I put together a whole playlist, and this was really interesting. So I put together a whole playlist for this album, probably 40 or 50 songs that I felt would, inspire us when it came to, recording these songs. I sent it over to Dan, and he said, if you listen to these songs, there's one thing that ties them all together. And I was like, really? Like, it's a whole load of artists and a whole different songs. And basically there's always an instrument that basically does the same thing all the way through. And he was like, that's basically on every song you sent me. So I feel like that's where we need to start with your album, making sure there is one instrument that kind of doesn't deter from doing the same thing over and over again. So on Sheets and Lies, it's the drums and the guitar, like one of the guitars just does the same thing. And, even when the chorus is really big, the drums are still just doing the same stuff and allowing everything else to be the sort of shine over this beat. And on Shining in the Half-Light, it's the bass, which does the run all the way through. So that's what we had thread through the whole album.
Yeah, it's interesting because I can think back even to artists that I listen to myself, and when you talk about that, there's some songs that I have listened to, there's always something they go back to, whether it be even a note, for example, like a root note in a scale or something that they keep on going back to and drawing you back into a song, so it's intriguing. And I was listening to the new album earlier on, and I find it really interesting again, sometimes even when the song kicks in, just how multi-layered and all these nuances that are in the songs. It must be an amazing process creating all of that within the studio.
Yeah, it really is. And often, as an artist, I don't hear all of that. And it's when you come back to it in the mixing stage and you're like, oh, listen to how the guitar just like flows into the organ. And, it's so magical. It's, and this felt, that everyone in the room were given the space. I really wanted people to have their say and think, actually, I don't like that. Can we try this? And and I think it made this like really lovely collaborative sound. And just listening to the way the band worked together. But also, they're my touring bands, so we've worked together for a long time. We know each other. We know what makes each other tick on stage, and I think that's really played a part in this record.
Yeah. And did you go down the route of live recording again with this album?
Yeah. So that was a whole other story this time around, because of course this was recorded in a pandemic when you weren't really supposed to be in rooms with people. And for me, I was like, I want to make this record. I want to be in the room with everyone. I want it to be live. And so everyone isolated so that we could actually go in and say, okay, because it was pre-testing, all of that. And I was 6.5 months pregnant as well. So
Yeah.
obviously for me, I was concerned about trying to keep as safe as possible. So yeah, that's how we did it. And I'm so glad we did, because I just think it just adds so much more to a record, because these are live songs. Like that's how we're going to tell the story, and that's what I wanted to capture in the studio.
Yeah, and you touched on working with Dan Weller. Obviously, he's a producer who works with a lot of rock bands and stuff, so it's a slightly different attack approach on this album. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was great. I remember when I was recommended Dan, because I was meant to go to Nashville. I was going to work with the same guys that I've worked all the time with. I've never really worked with a producer, or I haven't for a long time worked with a producer over here. I didn't really know where to start. I knew that I'd have an amazing band, so I was fine with that. But it was like, who's going to help me like thread all this together? And I was recommended Dan, and I started, looking at Discogs, and I was like, why have I been recommended Dan? Because, Enter Shikari, Sixth, like that doesn't quite sound like Elles Bailey.
Yeah.
And then I realized that a mutual friend of ours called Clint Murphy had mixed the last Enter Shikari record, and I just messaged him and said, Clint, what's the story with Dan? Do you reckon he'd do a good job on this album? And he said, if there's anyone in the UK to produce your album, it'd be Dan. I was like, cool. Put us in touch then.
Yeah,
and,
it's like a leap of faith sometimes, because obviously if you haven't worked with somebody and they haven't worked with you, it's a two-way street, and you just have to try and draw the best out of each other.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that really clinched it for me is not only did he really sort of get where I was coming from with the album, but we just got on. And I was like, we really get on well, so we're going to make a great record, because there's already synergy there.
Yeah, to give you confidence.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you touched on it. You were pregnant, obviously, during the recording of this album. Now, obviously, at the best of times, that's tough enough. But as you say, during a global pandemic, and the stress levels must have been through the roof because of all the drama going on.
Yeah, it was reasonably stressful. I think for me, I was just like, I just have to get to the final day of recording. Like you just sort of take every day and think, I hope no one gets sick. I hope we can make this album, because this is my only chance to make this record. Because otherwise I'm going to have a baby, and then it's going to be another year before I get back in the studio. So
and God, I can't even begin to imagine what that was like for you, because obviously it was like walking in eggshells every single day, wasn't it? With the whole COVID thing, because anybody could drop at any stage, and then their plans are scuppered.
It's so mad. And when you do what we do, and I mean, I keep on getting asked, Els, when are you coming to the States? And I'm like, I'm an indie artist. Like, I can come to the States when I can be guaranteed that I'm not going to go to an airport and test positive and have a tour which thousands of pounds worth of upfront money has gone into. Like, that's the realities of it. And we had a whole tour in autumn 2021, which was amazing. It was my March 2020 dates, all rescheduled to autumn 2021, 18 shows. And apart from the first show where our drummer tested positive just on the day of the show, we hadn't seen him. So we hadn't seen him for 3 weeks. So we were fine. But like, there was 2 days of on the day of the show, I was like, I have an 8-piece band gig presenting this new album in my hometown tonight. I need to find a drummer. And I found basically every single drummer in the UK, I think. And a guy called Phil Wilson, who I'd worked with during the pandemic, he just got in his car from Lincoln, learned the set in the car, and came and did the show and absolutely nailed it. And it was so amazing. But apart from those 2 dates where I had a drummer, we got through the whole tour unscathed. And I remember being outside the Sage in Gateshead, which is an amazing venue, like one of the best in the UK. I was meant to play. It was the first date that was cancelled on the March 2020. That was like the next date of the tour. And we're all standing outside. It's the last date of this tour, and we're all standing outside doing lateral flows, like, please, Nobody tests positive now. We've come so far.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's
and no
just
one did.
surreal, just a surreal time.
It's
I can't,
surreal.
yeah, the weirdest time. And even like from this side of the fence, like if I'm photographing a gig, you know, sometimes some bands don't even want you in the pit. So there's no pit, and you're going down to shoot and review a show from the back of the room. You know, just all the precautions that were put in place to keep tours moving, really, because the risk is just so high for them. You know.
Yeah, and that's it. I must admit, I still went out a little bit and met up with the fans, but I always wore a mask. And yeah, I'd wait till quite late on, you know, after the show before I went down. But yeah, you just got to do what you got to do to keep the tour moving.
Yeah. And tell me about, you decided again to independently release the new album rather than going with the record label. Can you help us understand, for people who maybe don't understand, what is the difference from that side?
So I was actually at the gig where my drummer got COVID. I got offered a traditional record deal. So that would mean that I'd essentially sign, a record label would buy the masters of this album from me. So those recordings of those songs would be owned by that record label in perpetuity, basically. Yeah. And they control what happens to those songs. Yeah. So I was offered a deal for that and subsequent albums, and which was what we were looking for. We were actively looking for a record deal, which is one of the reasons why it took so long for the album to come out. And then when I finally had this deal in my hands, I just was like, I can't let go.
It's gotta be tough.
And yeah, and I don't quite think the realities of releasing the record with a baby whilst living in temporary accommodation with a house build that was going horrendously wrong, quite, you know, I didn't really know what I was letting myself in for. But I'm so glad. I wouldn't change it. And, you know, it was almost a top 40 record. It was 42, but never once when I turned this album deal down, or, you know, I didn't turn it down because I partnered with them, and, you know, I just decided to self-release, but never once did I think I was going to get anywhere near, you know, Adele or Ed Sheeran or someone like that. And you're just like, wow, like, this is like, you know, I'm so proud of that whole journey and the hard work it's taken to get here just in these last 6 months. You know, it's been absolutely nuts. I've learned so much. If I do it again, I know how to make it better and more streamlined.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. As you say, every day is a school day, but the fact that there's so many demands on you now as an individual, and like when you're doing things like DIY self-release, you have to learn all aspects of the business, and, you know, just pucker up and get on with it. Yeah,
and I think it's just part and parcel of this, and you've either just got to be like, okay, I'm going to do this and enjoy it and learn and like thrive from it. Or, you know, there's things that I just don't do anymore because I can't do it. Like all of these reels on Facebook and Instagram, it's like, I don't even know where to start, so I'm just going to not. Yeah. Like I don't need it. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's true though. Like if you did, you know, like that's why they have the big machines. The record companies have massive PRs behind them who handle all that social media stuff for you, you know, and you just, but doing it, even for myself in a sense, you know, I said to myself, I was going to do that stuff as well, you know, generate small video content over the course of a week, but it's so time consuming.
It's so time consuming. Yeah. I have all the video. I just need someone to put it together for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what I can't do.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, modern day life is a pain in the ass. Let's be honest. And so, just help me understand as well. And so, not taking the record label, what do you have to put into place then to get your music out there to the public?
So, for me, hold on 1 second. Still got the frog. The frog is still there. So on the day that I was like, okay, I'm self-releasing, the first hurdle we had to get through was I really wanted this record to chart because I wanted it to chart high in the blues charts, in the Americana charts. That was the aim of this album. And so I feel very blessed it did. And I needed every sale to be chart eligible of the pre-order campaign. And it's all to do with pre-orders. That's how artists like me can chart so high in the charts, because you preload everything and then they all drop on week one. I was one of those artists on Road I Call Home, my second album. I was burned by Pledge Music. I released Wildfire. I did a pre-order campaign with Pledge Music for Wildfire. That was amazing. It was great. I then did the same for Road I Call Home because I wanted to be chart eligible. And that's what Pledge offered. They offered every sale as chart eligible. They report all the sales. And then Pledge went bust. And they didn't go bust. They basically stole. They took all the money out of the company and let the company go bust. No heads have rolled. I'm still bitter, as you can imagine. I think a lot of artists are. Yeah. But so I wanted every sale to be chart eligible, but I didn't want to go through a third party. And one of the things like going through a third party is you don't get the money until every sale has been sent out, and then a month after that. So had I gone through a company like Music Glue, which are a great company, I wouldn't have received any of the cash from the pre-sales in November. And this is really in the nitty gritty, but I was buying thousands of vinyls, and the cost of vinyl from when I ordered them went up £1,500 by the time of delivery. Like I ordered them in February 2021, they came in January 22, and the price had gone up by £1,500. So I needed that money just to keep to pay for the vinyl and to pay for this release, like just that. And that's the reality of it. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? How is this going to happen? How am I going to make every sale chart eligible? And I found out that my distributors who get me into HMV and Rough Trade and your local record store, they had just started a direct-to-consumer part of the company, and they'd make every sale chart eligible. And they could use my Elles Bailey website, but I'd have had to report to them every day. And I was like, this is going to be a lot of admin that I just can't do. So they said, well, if you build a different website on Shopify, we have an app that just plugs straight into Shopify, and then the app will do everything for you, but you just have to provide us with the platform. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll build a new website. And so that's what I did whilst on tour, or when Jasper was sleeping. I built and I coded a new website so that all of these sales could be chart eligible. So that's the reality of self-release right there. I've just basically told you the ins and outs of it. But and then in Record Store Week, when the album was coming out and I was doing these in-stores, I was on the phone to the distributors just before walking on stage because HMV had run out of stock, and it was like, we need to get more stock to us. So and it's that type of stuff. It's making sure HMV have enough stock.
Micromanaging it. It's just all glamour, isn't it?
It is. Where's these limos and fancy parties, eh?
Yeah, I'm telling you, the reality. I know, and so many people on the other side just will never understand that this is what you have to do to make it work in a modern day music industry.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is I'm so grateful to my fan base, who are so generous with their support of me, and it's their continued support that has just allowed me to continue on this journey. And the first weekend of releasing the pre-order was just mind-blowing, and I was like, okay, I'm actually going to be able to release this album. Like, it was amazing. They are incredible, and I'm very grateful.
I'm sure. And you survived your tour. You've got to the other side of into 2022. You've got COVID. So yeah, you're getting it all out of the way at the start of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
What's left for you then in the rest of the year? What have you got planned?
So festival season, and got some great festivals, which is super cool. Playing the Joe Bonamassa Blues Cruise.
Oh yeah, cool.
Going to Greece, so that should be fun. And then I have a massive announcement that's going out tomorrow, 10 a.m. Okay. So I'm guessing this video will go out after.
Yeah, will do. Yeah. I'm not that good.
Easy. So I'm going to be touring with Don McLean on his 50th anniversary American Pie tour.
Cool. Yeah. And I'm sure that's an artist that you listened to as a child and growing up.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I feel like everyone has a story about American Pie. You know, there's a song and an album that is just
iconic.
You know, worked its way across the globe. It's, you know, and there's not many albums like that.
Yeah.
So I feel very, very honored to have been asked to go out on this tour. I'm very excited. And the venues are amazing. We're playing the Palladium. So and I'm taking the whole band with me.
Very good. Very good. And again, this is just like reward for all the graft and hard work that you put in previously. It's finally coming back around.
Yeah, you know, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'm delighted for you. And are you sort of slowing down on the touring side of things because of the child, the baby? Are you more conscious of that now?
Yeah, I definitely am. I do think, you know, it's going to be more about less shows, bigger venues, which is the natural progression for you know, it's the way things you know you aim for. But realistically, like that's gonna have to be what it's gonna be for me, because I have a baby and I don't want to be an absent mother.
Yeah, just strap him on your back.
Take
him out there and pair of ear defenders on him. Be all good.
He's in the stage where he's taking them off though at the moment. You're like, they're there for a reason.
Well, I can imagine. Well, look, Els, I won't keep you any longer. I'm delighted. It's lovely to finally catch up with you.
And you too as well.
Yeah, and hopefully the voice will come back soon.
It's all right. I'm enjoying the rest actually, and I just binge watched Last Kingdom, which is the first time I've binge watched in probably since Tiger King in early 2020. So
well, this is it. Take the opportunity to rest up, put the feet up, and get yourself back on the foot. When is your next bit of action then?
It live 1st of May, which is Cheltenham Jazz Festival. Okay. So we got a while.
Yeah, that's good.
If I was going to get it now.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I've not had to cancel anything.
Yeah, brilliant. Delighted to hear it. Well, look, thanks again for your time this afternoon. Once again, Elles Bailey.